The roar of the jet engines filled the runway, a sound that could make anyone's heart race. But what was supposed to be a routine takeoff quickly turned into a nightmare. In the cockpit of a powerful F-22 fighter jet, the experienced pilot suddenly collapsed, leaving the controls dangerously unmanned. Panic rippled through the airbase, and everyone on the ground feared the worst. Then, in a twist no one could have imagined, an 11-year-old girl, small, determined, and calm under pressure, found herself facing the unimaginable. With the jet hurtling forward at breakneck speed, she somehow knew she had to act. Every second counted, every decision could mean life or death. The fate of the plane, the pilot, and everyone watching hung by a thread. As the world seemed to hold its breath, something extraordinary began to happen. This wasn't just a story of danger, it was a story of courage, quick thinking, and the incredible potential hidden in the most unexpected places. And just when you think it can't get any more unbelievable, the unimaginable happens. F-22s from nearby squadrons respond in a way no one could ever predict. What did the young girl do next? How did the F-22s react? You won't believe what happens in the next moments. No one knew exactly how the girl ended up in the cockpit that day. Her father, a retired pilot, had brought her to the airbase for a rare behind-the-scenes experience. She had always been fascinated by airplanes, spending hours reading flight manuals and practicing flight simulations at home. But this was different, this was real, a massive F-22 fighter jet ready to soar into the sky. As the jet sped down the runway, her small hands instinctively reached for the controls. She remembered her father's lessons: how to stabilize, how to keep calm, how to think quickly when everything seems out of control. Around her, the ground crew shouted and waved, unsure if she even knew what she was doing. The other pilots scrambled, trying to figure out how to take over, but the plane was already too fast, too far down the strip. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Families, reporters, and military personnel watched from a distance, hearts pounding as the unbelievable scene unfolded. Questions raced through everyone's minds. Could an 11-year-old really manage a jet like this? Would she survive the takeoff? And why were the nearby F-22s reacting in such a precise and unexpected formation, as if acknowledging her courage? The answers seemed just out of reach, leaving everyone holding their breath, waiting for the next impossible moment. Inside the cockpit, the girl's heart raced, but her mind worked with surprising clarity. Every lever, button, and gauge felt alive under her fingers. She could hear the pilot's radio crackling, but the commands didn't make sense without someone to execute them. Outside, the runway seemed smaller by the second, the jet gaining speed faster than she had ever imagined. She gritted her teeth and remembered her father's words: control comes from calm, even when everything else is chaos. Meanwhile, on the ground, the airbase was in full-blown emergency mode. Officers debated whether to scramble another jet to intercept, while medics rushed toward the crash area, assuming the worst. Among the onlookers, a young mechanic whispered that he'd never seen anything like this in his career. The F-22s nearby seemed to respond almost instinctively, forming patterns in the sky as if recognizing the girl's courage. Some speculated it was protocol, others thought it was something far more extraordinary. Inside the jet, a warning light blinked urgently. Fuel levels, engine heat, and altitude indicators all demanded attention. Every second felt like minutes, and every choice carried consequences. Could she land the jet safely? Could the nearby F-22s actually help her, or were they just a symbol of hope? The tension built with every heartbeat, leaving the world watching in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded. The jet had lifted off the runway, shaking violently as the engines roared at full power. The girl's hands gripped the controls tighter than ever, her knuckles white, but her eyes were sharp and focused. Each movement had to be precise. One wrong tilt, one sudden turn, and disaster would strike. Her training, her instincts, everything she had ever learned about flying suddenly mattered more than it ever had in a simulation. Below, the airbase looked like a blur. Pilots in nearby F-22s had formed a protective formation around her jet, banking sharply in perfect synchronization. It was as if they were guiding her, covering every possible angle of danger. Onlookers watched in awe, some holding their phones, others unable to speak, completely frozen by the impossible scene. News crews scrambled to capture the moment, but even the cameras couldn't capture the fear, the courage, the raw intensity filling the sky. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. Engine heat was rising, fuel levels fluctuated, and an approaching storm threatened to push the jet off course. The girl's heart pounded in rhythm with the jet's thrumming engines. One instinctive maneuver after another, she fought to stabilize the plane, all while the world seemed to hold its breath. And then, just as it seemed she might finally gain control, a sudden turbulence hit, throwing everything into chaos. Time slowed. Every eye on the ground, every pilot in the air, waited for the next move. The moment of truth, the climax of this unbelievable story, was about to arrive. Just as the jet seemed to stabilize, a new danger appeared. Radar warnings flashed across the cockpit. Another F-22, unknown and unresponsive, was closing in fast, threatening to collide with her plane. The girl's heart skipped a beat. She had been focusing on keeping her jet steady, unaware that an unexpected variable had entered the sky. Around her, the protective formation wavered slightly, and even the seasoned pilots monitoring from the ground exchanged worried glances. The storm overhead intensified, gusts of wind buffeting the aircraft as lightning flashed across the darkening clouds. Inside the cockpit, the instruments flickered under the turbulence, and the radio buzzed with urgent, fragmented messages. The girl's mind raced. Every second now held double the risk. She not only had to control the jet herself, but she also had to navigate an unpredictable threat that could appear at any moment. On the ground, the base command scrambled. Engineers, medics, and officers shouted over radios, trying to coordinate a plan, but the girl's unpredictability and courage made it clear that she was no ordinary pilot. Meanwhile, the nearby F-22s began performing maneuvers that seemed to acknowledge the new threat, as if they were about to intervene in ways no one expected.